Hey,
You're
Jimmy.
like, you're like, hey, I haven't even remembered like what comes first.
Is there an order? There is no order.
There's not really an order. Not for hitting the switch. Like, yes, we are live.
Power on.
Yep,
So we are live. We're already into maps because
yep.
that's what one architects like to do. That's what I like to do. I don't know about you, but I love panning around Google Maps and sort of stumbling across buildings that I think are interesting. And the reason I'm doing it now is because we're planning on going to the AIA conference in a couple of weeks. No, a couple of months.
Like,
Maybe I wish it was a couple of weeks away.
right.
So we're going to San Francisco, Jamie.
Yeah, it's like vacation time.
Yeah, it's going to be hopefully nice weather. I don't know. They're suffering at atmospheric rivers right now, so a lot of calamity in the weather scene right now out there. But so what are we looking at, Jamie?
We are looking at the aerial view of um, the convention center in relationship to one of our desired coffee sketch spots.
Yeah, it's always fun when you have a big city, and Google Maps has the 3D aerial scans of the buildings. So this is a Morphosis designed building, the San Francisco Federal Building that we're all. I don't know. I'm a fan. I don't know about you. Ever since they designed this thing and then it subsequently got built, it's been on the list to visit for sure.
Well, and like you're saying, it's like, you've got these sort of Google Street View, and flying around, and that's only gets you so far. I mean, it's the urban explorer, I think, in all of us, that we just, we, dig a good walking tour, kind of lean into that architecture junkie, and pack the pens and pencils, find a good coffee shop, and go sketch the crap out of this thing. and other stuff. I mean, that's the whole thing. And like this street here, I mean, like that building right there in front of you with those amazing windows. I don't know what that is, but I am totally intrigued by it.
Yeah, I got to get. Unfortunately, the Street View got uh, kiboshed
Dang
by the
bus!
by
It's the
the bus.
bus.
I tell you, if I could go farther, if I go past the bus,
No, it looks like the buses have parked.
you might get a little better. It's not bad.
Oh, it's a theater. Interesting. Oh, and you can see it there on the side too. There's the architect in us. Where we're looking at the profile of the building.
We're looking at a bus right now.
Yeah, you were looking at the bus. I'm looking at the profile of the building. See it right up there, just peeking out. Yeah, yeah. What's going on there? That looks interesting. Yep, somebody
Yeah,
doing something. Yep.
yeah. The Conservatory Theater, kind of. It's nice. Super bright red. It's actually a question I was going to ask you. Is thoughts on painting brick? I don't know if we've talked about that much.
You shouldn't do it. Um,
What if it's all red like this?
well, okay. So here's sort of the advice that we give, just in sort of the simplest terms. You know, historically, brick was not painted. And but if historic brick has been painted, can it be removed? Yes, generally speaking, most of the time it can be removed, but it needs to be done, by professionals, and in some cases, that might be an expensive process. So, that's one consideration. But if you've got a historically unpainted brick building, and you're doing some rehabilitation work to it, maybe even having to repair some brick, or repoint some mortar or things like that. A lot of times you also get the advice as a property owner, to paint the brick or seal the brick up, or do all these things to kind of really change the appearance of this building. And though paint will certainly change the appearance of a building, and maybe you have some really great grand designs for that, what you're actually doing is you're making a porous surface that was intended to breathe, covered with brick. So you're sealing it to a certain degree, but it's also absorbing and sort of sucking that paint into the brick. And now you've created a maintenance situation, where you're going to have to effectively repaint that building, a lot sooner than you probably were planning to. And you potentially are going to be trapping moisture in the brick. So you might be, creating some unwanted damage. If, especially with an older building too, is if there's any roof repairs or window leaks or water infiltration in, different areas, you've got party walls between buildings, there's lots of potential problems. And by adding that coating that you're really doing for an aesthetic, you might be making your life a whole lot difficult.
Yeah, I can agree with that. And I've seen a lot of painted brick here in Michigan. And, like you said, it's like building science, trapping moisture. But then you start to see that the paint kind of holds on, but then you see the weaknesses, and then you'll just see dust. It's not like even brick. The brick starts to just turn into dust and just crumble, just because so much moisture gets up in there. So
yeah, I mean, and some people get super aggressive about that advice, and you'll see online if you get a bunch of architects together, they'll be or traditionalists, even and not even just architects, but like traditional. I mean, everybody starts to have this super strong opinion. I mean, there's obviously some reality checks that you need to do to some of those kinds of discussions. But for Main Street projects that we deal with in sort of urban environments, if a building has been painted, more often than not, we're giving some aesthetic advice about repainting it. But at the same time, trying to educate about what's kind of going on, or what other things that they might need to look at in the future, because there's certainly going to be some problems down the line. Even if the paint job is a nice, provides a nice aesthetic for the building, or a repainted facade.
yeah. So I'm not a fan. I choose no.
Right. I mean, in some cases, there were buildings that came online in the beginning of their life where they were coated. But that's usually pretty rare.
Yeah, that's true. It's not the there are masonry buildings that were designed to be that way, but I defer back to well, it's interesting. Look at this. Sorry, distracted by the Google, but it's kind of sad that the sort of tent city that's going on just behind the Morphosis building. So interesting condition of our, big city like San Francisco. But so what was the one other thing I was going to say about the brick was deferring back to our fave Louis Kahn when he asked Brick what Brick wants to be. Brick wants to be unpainted. I just want to be Brick.
Yeah, I think he probably had it right.
So it's just kind of nice to see the glass facade. So we're gonna have to check this thing out.
But I'm glad that you sort of as you're sort of stumbling around, you're kind of and not saying that you're stumbling, but as you're kind of zooming around, there's realities to all these places that you go to, and I think that's part of the urban explorer aspect of all this too, is that you want to get to know these cities and kind of what's what some of the realities are for it, and you know, a lot of it is akin to things going on in, where we live as well.
Right. Yeah.
That's a really bizarre kind of ground plane, by the way, that I've not necessarily seen.
Which
Yeah.
part? This piece of the building?
This whole piece of the building. It's kind of
Yeah.
the less photographed.
Oh yeah, exactly. Hold on. Let me. I actually. Oh, where's my mouse? I kind of these things. I don't think they're weathering very well, unless they.
No, and they're kind of aggressive. I mean, it's like.
Sorry, I got kicked out of the street view. Let's get down. Yeah, well, it's one of those things. I guess it's a federal building, right? It probably has. I wonder if this fence is even original or part of their, you know, post 9/11 safety things that they added into it.
Yeah, I mean, all the buildings have to be defensible, to a certain distance, and yeah. But yeah, no, definitely excited that that's the proximity of that to where we're going to be downtown. Add that one to the list for the coffee sketch.
There's going to be quite a few, and let's just I wanted to pan back over to. So we're staying over here, the Hyatt, right? What do you know? I forgot which one it is. It's right over here. Here it is, right here.
No, it's right here, over here.
The Grand
right
Hyatt.
there. I find my cursor.
You know, it's fun. Have you done this yet? Have you looked for any coffee shops down below?
No, because we only made the reservations like this weekend. So no, I have not. But
that's right. Look, it's right next to an Apple store. If my mouse could get me to this side, look.
Well, I mean, California is kind of their mothership. So.
Yeah, you're right. I wonder how many Apple stores there are.
It's kind of like every corner probably.
So yeah, this is fun. I mean, this is definitely a little departure from what we normally do on the podcast, but kind of fun still. Plus, it's it looks a little warmer out there than it is here in Michigan. So
yeah, it's remember, this is before the episode.
True. Yeah, we haven't yet pushed the real live button yet. So
Yeah. This is just the warm up chit chat. Like don't understand.
So we're like at what is the Union Square? So pretty cool. I mean, we're definitely gonna have to get some coffee and sketch in here. Ooh, look at that. Well, this looks familiar. Interesting. Man, we're kind of in the high rent district, huh?
Something, yeah.
Louis Vuitton, Saks, Neiman Marcus. Yeah, I'll give props to Jamie for booking the hotel room.
Yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and hit let the real feed begin.
I'll get out of here. Oh, but so much fun. Look at this. We'll have to do this again before the next episode too. So
okay.
All right. Let me turn that off. Because then, as with like a kid in a candy store, I'm getting distracted. Why is my mouse not working? Oh, there. All right. This is why we get the troubleshoot the warm up out of the way.
This is like when Kurt figures out all his buttons. He's like, I've got all these presets, and then what were they again?
Well, it's user error as usual. All right, let me hit this intro. Hey, Jamie.
That's quite an intro.
That's right. I was just off stage left. So, um, how you doing?
Good, good. Another episode. You know, it's been a good season 5 so far. I would say, right?
Yeah. I was just. It's a good a good reminder. I was just talking to my brother-in-law, Joe. I give a casual shout out to Joe because he is a listener. He mentioned the podcast, and I just saw him this weekend, and yeah, 114, and we've been kind of get staying pretty consistent for season 5 for us in a
Yeah,
season 5.
yeah, yeah.
So
Like fun fact behind the scenes, like peel back the curtain, and there's a whole lot of like, oh, something just came up. We need to like push. So, but we're getting better, and those gaps in between are getting smaller and smaller for both of us. So that's good.
we do a little makeup work here and there.
Yeah.
And with Joe, so Joe was the reason we're a little late on this week's episode. He was in from out of town, and so we'll blame it on Joe.
So you're like,
So
dude, you get a shout out because you were like,
you're my reason.
yeah, you're Kurt's reason for bumping the
He's my
broadcast.
out.
Yep.
Yeah. So yes. And other things too, like technology. If you're watching on the YouTube or Twitch, you see that I'm playing around with this new headset microphone. I don't quite think it's accomplishing what I wanted it to. So
So you
unless
might not see this headset on episode 115 because
I know, I'm gonna have to, this is always the perpetual experiment between Jamie and I. It's like, I'll check it out when I'm editing and see if it sounds any good. And, I'll, t- you know, luckily we don't get a lot of, you know, nasty emails or, uh, you know, negative comments about our audio. So we must be doing something right.
yeah, it's the banter. Everyone comes for the banter,
Stays for the coffee.
stays for the coffee sketches. So
Yeah, that's right. So, what do you got in the mug today?
so take
Pause.
a little take
Pause.
pause, take a little taste. So I have the
Chirongi.
Chirongi, also a little city blend. And it's I'd say between the two because I did get two different blends from them. Um, I'm this one I would count as a fan. Apricot, toffee, and blackberry
Mm.
notes. Um, it's a Kenyan, um, and they say that it's characterized by intense sweetness and complexity, with a bright citric acidity and juicy berry stone fruit notes. I don't know what stone fruit is. Um,
It's like peaches,
oh,
peaches and
stone,
plums.
like the stone in the fruit. Got it.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. I'm like,
I always feel good when I can teach you something because you
yeah,
know a lot.
what? I'm thinking like a mortar and pestle, like we're,
Stone
killing the
ground
fruit. I'm like, what? Who's doing that to their fruit? Um,
or fruit that has smoked marijuana. That's stoned fruit.
no, I didn't say stoned. I said stone fruit, like a
Uh,
descriptor, not
yeah.
not that kind of
Well,
descriptor.
you brought up a mortar and pestle, and I thought we were gonna get into heavy masonry.
Oh, okay, no, no, no. This is not a pharmaceutical podcast. Um, but yes, I'd say the Karangi is, and that's my best attempt at pronunciation. It seemed to match yours, so I feel like I'm doing better. Um, for those new to the podcast, Jamie has trouble pronouncing things, but tries his best. It's a lot of sounding the words out.
That's
Um,
right. Yeah, phonetics.
it's phonetics. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. We probably haven't thrown that disclaimer out in a while. the Jamie and pronunciations.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. I mean, Kurt's gotten really good at sort of subtly correcting me, like in the next sentence, and so then I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds more like the word I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think it's because you're far enough away that you can't punch me.
Yeah, well,
If
probably that too. Yeah,
like I tend to not correct a lot of people because they're in my physical vicinity. They could. I don't know. I don't know what people. I don't think people would punch me, but
we've been friends a long time. You're probably allowed. So
it's true. Yes, it's almost been 10 years. We did kind of talk about this before, but it's been about 10 years, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
I mean, 10 years since we encountered or met each other at our first AIA committee work. So
And then
and
decided like halfway through, like, hey, let's have a podcast.
yeah,
So
let's invent this coffee sketch podcast. So yeah. So what I am drinking now is I had to go to the big corporate S, the green S, the Starbucks,
okay,
and I got a bag of the Italian roast to give it a go. I'm sure I've had it before, but something about maybe it's subliminal. Some of my students were over in Rome for spring break, and so we're chatting about the sights to see, things like the Pantheon, which Jamie has sketched and we've talked about multiple times. So yeah,
my favorite, like
yeah,
the favorite, like above all other buildings I've ever been to, favorite.
yeah.
Yes.
It's a must see every time you go to Rome.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and then and I think I've even said this too, and just for grins, for those who are like, oh yeah, geeky boy. Like if it's raining, and you're in Rome and you haven't made your trip to the Pantheon yet, definitely, make your way to the Pantheon when it's raining. Get that moment of, rain inside the building through the Oculus. It's pretty magical.
Yeah, that I've not both times I've been there. Luckily, been there twice. Been nice and warm and sunny, and so didn't get that opportunity. But yeah, it's a very surprise. Anyway, we didn't necessarily mean to talk about the Pantheon, but
Well, all your Italian roast, it's like I'm just sitting there going, yeah,
that's right.
like total inspiration. Like, I have been talking about a trip.
Yeah,
So
yeah. The topic that came up was favorite gelato flavor with the
oh
students. Gotta gotta always talk about that. I guess there was a black cherry. Sounded pretty good. Now, anyway, we can't keep talking about that because I'll have to run away and go
yeah,
find some ice cream.
you'd be like, I'm hungry. Time for some
So,
dessert.
so the Italian roast, gotta. But I'm going to probably wind up getting another um, Misfits Market uh, re-up from probably Intelligentsia. So we'll see what.
Well, and you better go check out your good friends at Rootless too. So we've got some questions for them. So
True, I do. Yeah, or Jamie's got questions.
yeah.
They've got answers. So, excuse me. So, what else you want to jump into? I gotta kind of pan over to our sketches. You want to talk about? Oh, you know what though? We have one other thing we were going to talk about first, right?
Yeah, so travel, we can still talk about our travel. Yeah.
Yeah.
So um as we if you were on before, the show before the show, and we were doing our Google Earth sleuthing of San Francisco, because we've decided to um, take a trip and um, be at the conference. We've
Right.
talked about our desire to go to the architecture conference, um, and how excited we've always been to get back there. So here we are, and in California, no less.
Yeah, San Francisco, which yeah, we were just panning around looking at buildings, but we're trying to we're on the fence here. I guess we have to make a decision because we're not made of money, right?
Right, right.
And you can't be in all 9 tours at once, so we have to
No,
pick one office tour, and so that's kind of what we're looking at right now. So I don't know if your thoughts. I mean, we were looking at we actually were probably I think what started the whole map journey was that we started Google mapping all of these different architects' offices to see to see
right.
what part of town they're in.
And then, of course, that turned into, because this is the Coffee Sketch podcast, a discussion of making sure to pack all our pens and pencils and finding a good coffee shop and locations to go sketch. Which we, of course, are developing that mental list um, in excitement and anticipation. But I did ask my friend Tyler, who is at Smith Group, Mr. Sustainability and Healthcare Stuff, who's lived in San Francisco, in the city for, way too long, many years. Kind of, because he's familiar, of course, with different firms in town and kind of locations. He gave some advice. Um, and then we've been sort of sleuthing on some of these firms that we weren't as familiar with, looking for kind of interesting locations, but at the same time, you're going to a firm's office. You want to see kind of interesting work. Meet some of the, this is the behind the scenes thing. Um,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Get the sneak peek, and so that's why I guess we're trying to decide if we go for firms that we aren't as familiar with, because there's obviously the big names, which if you're not an architect and listening, there's a variety of big firms, big corporate firms, and then smaller firms, and somewhere in between, satellite offices, things like that. But the big firms, they're going to have like probably all the toys, right?
right,
3D printing, VR, AR, I don't know, all kinds of like technology, and being in San Francisco, probably stuff that we uh us sole practitioners never get to see.
right. Well, and they're like tapping the Apple vein and just wiring themselves in. Yeah,
Yeah, so I don't know though. I mean, what do you think? I think we were kind of coalescing around this tour number 5 with Bolin, Swinsky Jackson, Site Lab, Urban Studio, and Bar Architecture, which honestly, the only one name that stood out to I think both of us was Bolin, Swinsky Jackson. But then we started, as Jamie said, the sleuthing, came up with some interesting reconnaissance on the other two companies. And they're also, in this case, that they are at least within the vicinity of the conference center plus our hotel. And given
and
that they
all
end,
and they're all three in sort of unique, nice buildings. I mean, like
yeah,
it kind of interesting, kind of mid-rise. You know,
not actually big buildings though.
yeah,
Kind of
yeah,
the sort of infill, small, older buildings, sort of. So maybe they've done some nice adaptive reuse in there too. So I appreciate that. Doesn't have to be a skyscraper.
right.
But
I
the
liked I liked that Site Lab, when I was looking at their website, had a lot of kind of adaptive reuse, urban infill type projects, but at the same time, kind of a broader district focus. It seemed like they were interested in the building and its context, and then also were using. It appeared to be kind of a variety of techniques in presentation of their materials. So seemed to be a lot of process thinking kind of going on, which you and I, particularly dig. So they weren't a firm that I was familiar with ahead of time. So
yeah, so is that the one?
I mean, you were asking about the um, is it Ed? I'm just
Oh,
going to call them Ed. Ed.
EHDD.
Yeah, Ed. Ed's architecture. Sounds like a market. Ed's architecture. Get your corned beef sandwich right here.
Id. Id. Well, yeah, they well we had talked about the a tool that they developed early in this season called the Epic tool, which is the early phase carbon calculator. And so they developed it in-house, but have published it online for free to use, where some people and some companies are developing these calculators for money, for sale. They've decided to kind of open source it, and I don't,
Yeah, well,
so
and one of the sessions that I was hoping that you were going to get in town early enough to see was the sort of the um, it's a carbon crash course in the calculators. Um,
oh
so
oh
I'm gonna be there early enough. That'll be probably my first session on Wednesday,
oh
and
that
then you'll get in later, and then we'll um, go see stuff.
yeah, you'll have to tell me about that because yeah, I might have I might have uh, what's it, naively picked the wrong flight, but we'll see.
And for those who've traveled with Kurt before, this does happen.
Yeah, Kurt's what's the fear of spending dollars gets in the way of being what strategic.
Yes, yeah.
It's, or maybe it's my own kind of strategy because it typically
It
stuff
usually
kind of works
involves
out.
a. I mean, at the end of the day, you usually have a really great adventure, which all of us will appreciate. But yeah, when you get that text from Kurt and he's like, "Here's my flight info," and I'm like, "Where are you going? Like,
Oakland.
are you sure? Like, that's across the bay, right?" So
Gee, but it physically isn't very far.
no, physically is not far, but
Oh man. Yeah, well, we'll see. When I map it here, because I'm 3 hours ahead, right? So I'm not at rush hour, then it only says it's like 25-minute drive. But it's
but then
probably
what
it's like
what
four
was the
o'clock in the morning
what was the first thing that I texted you? I was like, dude, like you're gonna land in Oakland
in
like
rush hour.
in rush hour.
Well, this is the adventure begins.
Right, right. Well, so for the friends of the podcast who know us pretty well, there's probably one or two of you who are laughing or giggling, and that's totally understandable because that was the reaction that I had. Um, but we we will be there. It will be fun, and we will see you all soon. So
Yeah,
we'll leave it at that.
yeah, yeah. I'll tell you though. I'll guarantee you, someone's going to be on that flight with me. There's other people that have my kind of strategy.
Oh yeah,
Although, anyway, so yeah, so it's fun. So I don't know. Well, we're sounds like we're still maybe on the fence on the tour, but maybe a little more digging. I might as well shore up the some of the other events that we've already agreed to. So
yeah. But yeah, I think we're down between do we go big with the big firms with the all the toys, or do we go kind of with the other ones? So 4 or 5 is sort of I think where we are, which jives with Tyler's recommendations as well. So I think we're okay so far. No offense to anybody else on the list. It's just that's sort of
you
where we got drawn to.
you gotta you gotta pick,
Gotta
somehow.
pick. Gotta
So
pick.
very, very good.
If
So
anyone else wants to, if any of these studios want to invite us over, like, anyhow, then,
yeah,
call us.
yeah, yeah, that's right. You know, we we actually we'll take advertising. We can you know buy us
Yeah,
a coffee.
buy us a coffee. We can just come and sketch in your office. Yeah,
Yeah, we're
hang
we're
out in the
open to
hang out in the break
opportunities.
room. Like
Well, now that's an idea.
yeah,
A little live coffee sketching on site, on tour.
we'll call it the break room tour. Like
The break room tour.
we're gonna go to we're gonna hit
Sketch
all
all the
these
break.
open studio nights. Be like, okay, we're here. Got our mic set up.
Well, we'll need some portable options.
Yes. Yeah.
So you wanna segue over to our sketch for today?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sketches.
Sketches.
I'll pan over. Speaking of older buildings, oh, let me get to hide this out of the way. So this one of Jamie's sketches looks familiar in that we've talked about a couple of these so far this season with some of your site work, your field work on existing buildings. And you know it's I got to say, even though we have talked about one or two other field visits, recently, it still is inspiring to see the perspective, the sort of vignette sketch with your sky, some entourage like clouds and birds and trees, and then the detail or the analytical like diagram, floor plan, elevation, things like that are down below in this sketch. And it's just something that now you have a little bit of, on one page you've captured a few different ideas. You take it back to the office or take it on the to the coffee shop and think about even more. So um,
Well,
and
yeah. I mean,
especially that window, you got a window with a little brick going on. And
well, and it's like you were asking me about sort of in the precursor to the podcast, the show before the show, about sort of painting brick, and that's why I was sort of excited that we were going to talk about this one a little bit. Is that I think you know at the end of the day, you know whether it's brand new construction or rehabbing, adaptive reuse of an existing building, and you're dealing with a property owner or someone in a district, um, that's interested in investing or trying to figure out how to, revitalize underutilized structures. It's about giving people a perspective of, and I like the vantage point that I'm coming into these projects in, try and um, appreciate that opportunity. Is I'm the happy third party who's showing up with sort of fresh eyes to their neighborhood or to their community, um, and sometimes it's kind of highlighting the great assets that they do have. And you don't always get that opportunity. Sometimes it's you're kind of parachuting in, and people perceive that you're going to come in and sort of tell them what to do, or point them in a direction and be very heavy handed with things, and not necessarily listen to their story. And I think the flip side is you can almost give them an opportunity to look at their story a little differently. As they're sort of telling the story and the history of a building like this, um, that they're keenly aware of its connection to the community, but that it's been empty for decades. And so there's an inherent sadness about it. And what you're, you know, no, you don't have to come in and paint the whole building white, with, colorful accents or something like that to make it revitalized. It's looking at the details of the building, and and encouraging everybody else to look at those details too. And and sometimes a sketch does that. Um, so in this particular case, that was a lot of what the focus was the building, like you say, in perspective, and looking at some of those brick details, and then thinking about it in plan and saying, okay, well, you've got a building that is set up for tenants. How's that going to work? And how does it sort of reactivate a street? What does the building look like in perspective that it's telling us where signage wants to be? So that the signs are brand new. I mean, and we're not trying to do something historically accurate or something like that, because that's sort of a little bit inappropriate. It's like a false sense of history. And for a new business, why would you want to have a particularly old sign or something like that? So things like that, where we're trying to have those kinds of discussions with people, that are economic realities. Why put I was dealing with this on a project recently. Is everybody's into window wraps right now? Big window wraps, because it's a fairly inexpensive printing process that you can. Everyone has a lot more technology on their phones and on their computers now, so they can come up with new logos, new prints, and it's a little bit disposable. It's like disposable signage. And so you do these kind of window wraps, but the thing that people aren't sort of thinking about is, yes, it's visible, at a large. It's like playing with the super graphic, which we've talked about. My love of the super graphic. The muralist, in me. But if you're walking by that on the sidewalk, and you've got this gigantic, window wrap that's covering up most of the window, you don't get to see the activity on the inside. That's not the transparency that draws people in. That activity, the light, the people, the conversations, the things that you can see on the inside that goes, oh, that's kind of a neat place, let's go explore there. Window wrap, yes, the window wrap is about the cars passing by on the street, being able to read it, from a distance. And sometimes we have to have those kinds of interesting conversations with folks too.
Yeah, here in Flint with the Historic District Commission, we're also getting approached by people wanting to put window wrap, vinyl window stickers in historic structures. And so we have to, you know, even that we consider signage, so it does have to go through the HDC meeting. But yeah, you're right. It's not very expensive, but it does kind of it's only primarily serving that the pace of the vehicle, not the pace of the walker, the pedestrian, or um, or someone trying to appreciate the building. So yeah, I was curious though, this the way you sketch this is the sort of white surface, is that like a plaster over top of the brick, or is that?
No, it's two different colors of brick, and so
Oh, okay.
doing it in black and white. Building had a really distinct brick pattern, and two different colors. One was sort of a kind of a pale yellow, and so that ends up being the body. What you're seeing as sort of that what perceived as a plaster. It does. I mean, now that you say it this way, I hadn't read the sketch that way, but it does sort of remind you of instances where, especially on interiors, where people have peeled away the plaster and kind of revealed the brick underneath.
Mhm.
The building, in the sketch sort of, for the listener, that it really does kind of have that kind of quality to it. But the building, deliberately was two different brick tones. Not a lot of um, brick pattern that pushed and pulled from the facade itself. So this is all coplanar. So all the brick is integral with one another, and so there's no real stepping to the facade. It's all done with kind of color and pattern, which is understandable as well, for the age of the building and kind of where it's located in its community and whatnot. But it has a really distinctive appearance for sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks for adding that in there. Yeah, well, it's still since I've not seen it in person, it still reads like that plaster, but it's still you know, you know, dealing with brick is interesting after so many years of working in architecture. It just I actually find myself more interested in brick as a material than I was, say, as a student. And it's sad though, because I mean, it there's so much detail if you look at a variety of older historic buildings and the artistry, the technique in stacking brick and creating pattern in brick and things like that. That it's hard if you for me at least I don't have that much experience in detailing brick buildings to where I could uh, kind of create a pattern of either mixed colors or mixed laying patterns, stacking, um, to describe to a mason like here's the idea for the design. Given say like 100 years ago when certain brick buildings just had like you know that was like the artistry was like in how to create these stacking
Well,
patterns.
it really is. I mean, I think even in my own career, for many, many years, really wasn't dealing a whole lot with, brick. You had a couple projects that we would have to brick detail, but nothing where it was really, broader explorations of design. And I think sort of two distinct moments that probably changed my vantage point about it was one when I was teaching, and Michael Rotundi was doing the new architecture building for Prairie View A&M, with HKS's. They were architect of record, but the building is brick. It's primarily brick, and he was really interested in sort of historical um, uh, analysis of kind of that site and different things like that, and sort of talking culturally and trying to not necessarily misappropriate culture, but lean into an architecture of place that maybe never even existed there, but that was appropriate for people, and to consider for that site, and what a new architecture building at a historically black college could be, and kind of the weaving of the architecture, with the brick itself was really phenomenal. There's some really amazing, details, kind of peeling away of form. There's a kind of a curvilinear piece that sort of really becomes a centerpiece for it, kind of hinging at the edge of campus. Just a beautiful project. Um, yeah.
I'm trying to drop in a picture of it.
And even just the siting of the building itself, was really, really important. There's some groves of trees that are kind of in the background of this, and then one that's more in the foreground. So the building kind of wraps one of the trees, kind of creates a courtyard space, and then beyond it, another grove of trees that sort of suggests, a landscape courtyard, um, kind of a piazza, within this grove of trees. And on that side, there's a glass scrim, or glass with a scrim piece that sort of the studios look out to. So it's a really nice project. It really kind of got me thinking about the nature of brick in more of a contemporary context. And so I, kind of use it a little bit of as a touchstone as well, kind of in my own kind of experience and thinking, through somebody else's work.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this building too. I remember, since Michael Rotundi was or is LA based, um, so and I did my undergraduate out there. He was, I think when I was a student, this was in design or somewhere around that time, about 20 years ago or so. And yeah, it's an interesting comparison to talk about brick in a new way compared to old bricks, older brick buildings, and trying to create complementary characteristics versus copycat characteristics or mimicry and things like that.
Yeah, I
So
mean, how do you push an older technology forward, or an older, a historic material forward, where you're not necessarily jettisoning, all the principles of how, I mean, you can see all the brick isn't floating. I mean, I think that that's the impulse a lot of architects that you see today try to do, especially with these sort of mid-rise buildings, is they want to have brick on the facade because somebody, the client, whomever, somebody says, oh, you have to have masonry on the exterior, and so they add it, but then the brick is like floating in the air. It sits on a shelf angle, and and it's really probably even thin brick. It's probably not even like real bricks. But here you can see that the brick definitely has a distinct appearance, almost um, a fabric, which is, it has an element of motion to it, but that it's also very permanent. And I love that about the way he's done this, because it also engages the ground plane. It doesn't sort of negate the fact that it actually has to touch the foundations of this building. So yeah, it's a really neat project. I really well executed.
yeah, it's a favorite of ours. So did you want to talk about this other
Yeah, so
sketch
this one
too?
was fun because it was sort of like the next day, relative to the other one, was um, thinking about um, the Oscars just happened recently, and so we've talked a lot about sort of production design and architects and designers sort of intersecting that pop culture kind of world of ours. So this is the new um, Black Panther movie, Wakanda Forever, sort of a sketch from um, the sort of woman who's been sort of in charge of the world building of Wakanda that we see on the screen. And her work has just been phenomenal. And she kind of went on a um, Twitter sharing spree, um, kind of in a little bit in advance of the Oscars, kind of after they were nominated um, for the production design and the other things associated with it, and after the reception of the film. But in doing that, she sort of was talking about the little Easter eggs that are sort of that populate the work, but also sort of the evolution of some of the design ideas that they were doing. And so it was a really fascinating read. If anybody's on Twitter, definitely check out her thread on the work that she did for this movie. Apparently, there's we've talked about it before. There was a kind of a tome that they used for the first film that they kind of created. I imagine there's one for this. At some point, I'm sure that these are going to get published um, in kind of real book form, which would be amazing things to see. But this particular sketch is uh, there's a street scene kind of at the very beginning of the movie, kind of a funeral procession. You don't ever get this actual shot from the movie, but you can see in the kind of upper left hand corner Chadwick Boseman kind of on a mural, kind of in the background. But the focus of the sketch is this kind of building, and the reveal was that in the font and the typeface that this is it's actually it's an architecture office. And so Hannah's work, so she's one of the architects of this architecture firm, including Jack Kirby, who was one of the old school kind of creators for Marvel Comics, associated with Black Panther and all that. So it's like their names as if they're an architecture firm. And it really is, it's kind of I think it's sort of a beautiful Easter egg, and then one for architects who love pop culture to lean into.
Yeah, and the building itself, the sketch, it has some elements to it that sort of reflect what might be an architect's office. Sort of a small building, but with a small storefront, but has some sort of um, ornament to it that is a little more abstracted and sort of representative of maybe a particular era, deconstructivist or something like that. Minimal, modern, which is kind of fun. So I gotta. It's on the list. I gotta get to watching that movie and try and keep an eye out for the all the other Easter eggs and things too. So
Yeah, well, and like this, this sketch too is one where um, it's it's actually done initially as a quick ink sketch of the building, and then reversing the process. The pencil is the part that adds all that sort of texture and and ambiance of place. Um, so it's actually reverse of what I usually do. If I am using a pencil and a pen, you'll, and most artists would approach it this way. You do the pencil underlay and then the pen over the top. In this case, it's actually the pen is the pen sketch to begin with to kind of block in all the pieces, and then the pencil kind of comes back at the end to kind of work through the textures and the gradients, and it gives it a real kind of plasterized feel, um, to the skin of the building, and then some shadow and to the glazing spaces kind of underneath that kind of, like you say, decon canopy.
yeah, excuse me, the way, yeah, the facade is rendered does have this sort of cast stone or some sort of plastered and cast relief into the into it. So yeah, it has some nice little nuance to it. So yeah, good. It was fun to kind of an interesting comparison with adding the Prairie View building in between, and sort of this idea of like facade and masonry and evolution of these brick
Well,
materials
and
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 things like that over
and,
time.
and where your inspirations can come from. I mean, it's I think that all those things are things we enjoy talking about. So this is just, I think this is me kind of reemphasizing for you. You need to watch this movie. So
Yeah, it's on the list. It's on the list. The here, let me click that off. The yeah, it's definitely on the list, so I will get back to it. So for those that have been watching this entire time, thank you for watching and listening along. Hope you got something out of these sketches with Jamie. And Jamie, thanks for always producing some fantastic sketches. And I look forward to talking to you on the next one.
thanks, buddy.